A good old soul. Alan and his band of 3 buddies were nearing Stinnett Creek. It was the hottest strip of water for fishing in their small farm town of Addison. One could catch a 16-inch bass or a 20-inch catfish. It was what was everyone's mind as they made the drive. Suddenly there was a pop, and Alan's van started jittering. He quickly pulled over to the side. "Oh man," he exclaimed, poking his head out of the window, "we have a flat." "The creek's not that far," one of his buddies, Ben, said. "We could walk it." "I don't feel like walking anywhere," another buddy, Josh, protested. "It's too freaking hot." "Yeah, no walking," Henry, the fourth buddy, agreed. "I'm not leaving my van on the side of the road." Alan got out and went to the rear for the spare, the tire iron, and the jack. The others joined him. They started complaining about the heat when they noticed a car steadily racing toward them. Their stomachs filled with dread when they saw it was a Chrysler 200 sedan. "No, it's Randell," Henry reported. Randall was the biggest student in their junior class. Since he had moved there 2 years prior, he spent all his time harassing boys that were smaller than him. Alan and his friends were nearly the size of tree branches, so they were prime targets. Randall's sedan pulled up behind the van. "What's up, fellas?" In addition to Randall's size, his face was probably the most unnerving. He had bushy eyebrows that covered his eyes in shadow, making him look malicious. He would also smile a wry and cynical smile that often meant trouble was lurking. He examined the flat. "Having a case of bad luck?" "We're handling it," Alan said. He had already placed the jack and was now pumping it up. "That's a shame. Bad luck can be so inconvenient. Are you sure you don't want my help?" "I am a mechanic, you know." Alan started unscrewing one of the bolts. "We're good, thanks." "Well, I guess I'll be seeing ya." He started to turn, but then said, "Oh yeah, I almost forgot." In one swift motion, he pulled out his pocket knife and jammed it into the back driver's side tire. Alan's friends let out a soft surprise as Alan just watched in stunned silence, listening to the unrelenting whoosh of escaping air. "You would probably want my help now." Laughing, he got into his sedan and sped away. Alan threw the tire iron to the ground. "I can't believe this." "It's okay," Ben said. "It's not like we're stranded." "That's not the point. I can't afford a tow truck or a new tire. You know my parents. They want me to experience stuff, teach me responsibilities. They're not going to pay for any of this." Just then his phone went off. Speak of the devil. "Son," his father said, "you need to get home. Your grandmother is dying." Alan and his friends were hanging out in the living room when the funeral was finally over. The television wasn't on and their phones were stuck in their pockets. Alan's father was strict on the no technology rule. You can't mourn someone if you're distracted with TikTok. Alan's 7-year-old sister Bernie came running in holding a brand new doll. "Look at what I got." "Wow," Alan said with not much enthusiasm. "That's a killer doll. I'm going to put it with my collection." There was a shelf underneath her bedroom window that was stocked with dolls. To Alan it was really creepy, and he tried to not go in there. There was a knock on the door. Alan answered it. His heart leaped into his throat when he saw Randall standing in the doorway. "What do you want?" he groaned. "Look," he started, "I'm sorry about your grandmother. I really am. To prove it, my gift to you is replacing the tires on your van, free of charge." Alan knew better. How was he going to trust a guy who had held his head underwater at Stinnett Creek for almost 5 minutes? Then again, the time it would take to save up for tires would be 3 months maybe, even for used ones. His father wasn't going to ride him around town, especially not his friends. Walking out was out of the question. The heat was so intense he could see the heat haze in the distance. "If that's what you really mean," he said, "fine. I'll have it towed tomorrow." He slapped Alan on the arm, making him wince. He wouldn't be surprised if his arm was numb for the remainder of Shiva. "What was all that about?" John asked. Alan told him, and they all protested. "That's a trick man," Ben said. "He's going to mess up your van again." Alan shrugged. "Do you want to walk in this heat until school?" That shut them up, but inside Alan was praying that Randall could just be good this one time. "Hey, boys." Alan's father appeared carrying a wax candle on a brass pole. He looked around, trying to spot the perfect place for it. He settled for the corner near the entrance. "Who got us the candle?" Alan asked. "You know Mrs. Harper, right? Well, she found it at a flea market for $10. It's not too bad." To Alan, it was merely junk cluttering up the house. It was another scorcher as Alan strolled into his house, slamming the door as he did. His hair was matted with sweat and his clothes were sticking to his skin. He had gone to pick up his van from Randall's father's shop, but ended up walking back instead. "What's going on?" Alan's father appeared from the kitchen. "Why are you slamming doors?" "Randall caused a crack in my hub." "What are you talking about?" Alan explained that he went to pick up his van, but there had been a loose bolt in the rim. It had caused a wide crack in the hub as he was driving. "Are you sure it was Randall's fault?" his father asked. Alan felt insulted. "Of course, he's the one who worked on them." Alan's father rubbed his head. It was a familiar sign that said he didn't know who to believe. It might have been an accident. Don't go jumping to conclusions. With that, he walked back into the kitchen. Alan sat by the candle. The candle was lit, and it casted a dim green glow against the white wall of plaster. Against his father's wishes, Alan took out his phone and started texting the incident to his buddies. In the midst of the texting, he said aloud, "God, why can't Randall be nice for once? I wish he wasn't such a jerk." Suddenly the candle blew out. Alan lifted his head curiously. There was an unusual chill. He checked to see if any windows were open. Outside, the trees were still. No significance of any wind. He went back to the group chat. "Guys, we have to do something about Randall." "Alan," his father called from the kitchen, "come here, please." He texted his buddies goodbye and shoved his phone back into his pocket. Their fishing lines were dead in the water. The sun was beating down on them like a spotlight. Alan could hear all of their stomachs grumbling. "We're getting skunked," Josh exclaimed, wiping the sweat out of his eyes. "We need to wait for cooler days," Ben suggested. "It's going to be a scorcher for the next 7, Henry reported. "You guys didn't have to come," Alan said, "especially since we all had to walk here." A vehicle was approaching them. Everyone groaned when they realized it was Randall's sedan again. "Why do we even leave the house?" Josh whined. The car stopped, and Randall got out. Immediately, Alan noticed that something was off about his face. Instead of that malicious expression with the shadowy eyes and cynical smile, the eyebrows were up and there was no smile. In fact, Alan thought he was seeing a doleful look. "Can't you just give us a break?" Alan asked. "We've been tortured enough, especially me." "I'm so sorry," Randall said. Even his voice sounded doleful. "I'm sorry about the way I've been treating you guys. I'm sorry about your grandmother, and I'm truly sorry about your tires. I will make it up to you. Not only will I fix it for free, all of your family and friends will get free service, including tire rotations, for the next month." There were snickers from the group. Alan snorted. "Yeah, right. I'll keep dreaming." "I've also given your father a $500 check from my own account." There was no way Alan was going to let Randall work on his van again, even if that meant getting beaten to a bloody pulp. "Do you think I'll get into another vehicle again after you've worked on it? I could have had a serious accident." "I know I have to prove myself. I'll pick up the van and work on it tonight. Then tomorrow I'll drive you around in it, just to show you I'm not lying." Alan shook his head. "No, I don't think. Trust me, Alan." It might have been Alan's imagination, but it seemed like Randall was practically begging. It was quite humorous. Then Alan thought if he let Randall work on his van again, he would bring his father along, just so he could finally see what kind of jerk this guy really was. "Fine, go ahead." Randall bent down and cupped Alan's hand into his. "Again, I apologize, man. I apologize to all of you. You don't deserve what you've gotten over the years. We'll make a day where we'll all hang out." "That's not going to happen," Ben said as Randall drove off. "I'd rather eat roadkill than hang out with him." "How could you let him take your van again?" Henry asked. Alan shrugged. "I'll have my father this time, just to see how sincere he really is." The next day, while he was eating breakfast, his phone went off. It was Randall. "Your van's all fixed," he said. "My father's coming along for the test run," Alan informed him. "We'll be there in the next hour." "Awesome, bro." On the way to the shop, Alan asked his father, "Hey, did that check Randall gave you bounce yet?" He smiled as he said it. His father looked confused. "No, I bought a new saw with it." "Why?" Alan's smile faded. "No reason." This is weird, he thought. Randall must be building up to something. I shouldn't let my guard down. All three went for the test run, with Randall driving. There were no jitters, vibrations, or strange noises of any kind. In fact, Alan couldn't remember when the van drove smoother. "You got some talent, kid," Alan's father said. "He deliberately left a bolt loose and caused the hub to crack," I reminded him. "Again, I'm sorry," Randall said, his tone even more sincere than before. "I'll say it once more if you want." "I think Alan's in the wrong for not accepting your apologies," his father reprimanded. Alan couldn't believe it. It was only a couple days ago when Randall tried to cause a wreck, and now his own father was sticking up for the bully. He still didn't trust him. Once his father was gone, Randall would probably pour alcohol into his gas tank. "Aren't you going to take Randall back to the shop?" his father asked as he saw Alan start for the front door. Before Alan could say anything, Randall said, "That's okay, I can walk. I need the exercise." With his hands shoved into his rustlers, he started down the street. "That's a fine boy," his father said. "No, that's not a fine boy. That's the bully of all bullies. He doesn't care about anyone but himself. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing, one that loves to pick on scrawny, innocent prey, all to feel superior." The next day, Alan and his buddies decided to shoot hoops. Randall found them and wanted to join. Nobody wanted him to, but didn't protest. Alan was keeping his guard, waiting for Randall to strike. He suggested they play a 2-on-2 game, and he would referee. He was fair, calling it right down the middle. "This isn't Randall," Joss whispered. "What's wrong with him?" Alan shook his head. "It's a cover-up. Don't let him fool you." "Who cares?" Ben said. "At least he's not beating us up. Let's savor the moment." How about I take your family out for dinner? We can visit that new steak place over in the next town. Sure, Alan said. Maybe Randall was going to poison his whole family. On the way over, Randall and Bernie sang Disney songs, and he and Alan's father discussed politics. I like Randall now, Bernie said at a restaurant, stuffing her face with Kit's fries. He's my favorite. Randall, Alan's father said, I hate to ask this of you, but my truck has been acting funny. There seems to be a clang sound when I start it up. No problem, boss, Randall said. Tomorrow I'll come look at it personally. He hated to admit it, but Alan was starting to feel more comfortable with Randall's new personality. Even though he was telling himself not to let his guard down, he couldn't help but feel this might be the start of something great. The next afternoon, Alan was relaxing on his bed, texting the group chat. He was suggesting to them that plotting revenge on Randall might not be necessary when a text from an unknown sender appeared. Do you really think you could get rid of me? Alan narrowed his eyes. He texted back, huh? The next text didn't come for a few minutes. When it did, it read, Sorry, but you can't get rid of me that easily. Who is this? He started texting his friends about the strange text. They suggested that he just ignore them. Then the stranger messaged back, I'm still here. In fact, I'm closer than you realize. It was then Alan thought he might be dealing with a stalker. It wasn't uncommon for boys to have stalkers too. The world was full of sick individuals, and Alan was afraid that there might be one watching his family. Then he heard a scream. It was coming from his sister's room. He raced toward her. Alan, Bernie cried, running into his arms. It's my dolls. The eyes of Bernie's dolls were dripping with blood, as if they were crying. He hugged his sister tightly, trying to calm her trembling body. What's going on? Bernie asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, Alan answered, his voice barely above a whisper. Then there was laughter coming from the living room. Alan's first inclination was to stay where they were. If they did that, something else might happen. Alan never had believed in spirits before, but now it seemed like their house was now possessed. I'm going into the living room, he informed her. No, don't go, Bernie begged. Just stay close by me. Alan took her hand and they both crept into the living room. Static blared from the television. The volume was at its maximum. They both covered their ears. Then a face started to appear between the static, and Alan gasped. Randall's malevolent form filled the screen. His fiery eyes burned into Alan's, and his cynical grin was that of the devil. Did you miss the old me? The image rasped. Alan picked up the remote and threw it at the screen. The television made a deafening crash as the screen went blank. Alan looked frantically around for any more signs of their otherworldly intruder. More laughter arose. A shadowy figure was slowly approaching them. Alan's first instinct was to run, but how could you outrun a demon? If they left the house, would it follow them? The shadow lifted up its arms. Do you want to play with me? It hissed. Suddenly the shadow lurched forward. It let out a roar and flew Alan back against the wall. Bernie screamed. Just then there was a knock at the front door. Hello? It's me, Randall. I've come to check out your father's truck. Randall, Alan shouted. Help us. Randall opened the door just as Alan was lifted up. His throat started to close, like invisible fingers were strangling him. What's going on? Randall asked, staring up at Alan. There's a demon in here, Bernie cried out. Demonic laughter filled the house. Randall looked up at Alan with a mixture of horror and concern. He looked around frantically, as if he had lost something of value. His eyes then landed on the candle. He went over and pulled out a lighter from the pocket of his rustlers. Randall, Alan tried saying, but his voice was coming out weak. I know what has to be done, Randall said. Sorry, buddy, but it's the only way. He lit the candle and gripped the brass pole. I wish for this demon to leave this house. The candle blew out. Alan fell to the floor. He could still feel the invisible hands around his throat. Randall turned around. Alan's heart dropped into his stomach. The expression on Randall's face did not seem so congenial now. The bushy eyebrows were casting the shadow over the eyes, and he was sporting that wry and cynical smile. I don't know what you guys are talking about, he said. He looked toward the door. I got a truck I need to look at. That's going to cost your old man a pretty penny. He snickered as he headed out the door. Randall saved us, Bernie said. I'm going to go see my dolls. Alan remained on the floor, rubbing his sore neck. He looked in amazement at the candle. It seemed impossible, but it had happened. Alan had never asked for Randall's evil soul to be placed somewhere else, much less turn it demonic. It was one of those ancient sayings, be careful what you wish for. Alan was taking this incident as a life lesson. You couldn't go through life solely on wishes. The real achievements are the ones you worked for. If he wanted Randall to be nicer, he would have to extract some type of revenge, just like he had planned on doing before. Yes, he would do that, just not right now.